The old house at the edge of the city loomed large and lonely against the darkening sky. Maria, a 22-year-old graphic designer, had moved there seeking solace and a fresh start. The bustling city life had become overwhelming, and the tranquility of the outskirts seemed like the perfect antidote. The house, with its creaking wooden floors and peeling wallpaper, had character. It whispered stories of the past, a charm Maria found irresistibly comforting. The first night in her new home, Maria slept soundly, the distant hum of the city replaced by the symphony of crickets and rustling leaves. However, as days turned into weeks, the serenity she cherished began to unravel. It started subtly, a misplaced book here, a picture frame tilted there. Maria shrugged it off, attributing it to her own forgetfulness. She was settling in after all. But then came the notes. They were small, yellowed pieces of paper with messages that sent chills down her spine. "I see you. Read the first one. Left on her kitchen counter." Maria dismissed it as a prank, perhaps a remnant from the previous owner. Yet, the notes continued, each more unnerving than the last. "You can't hide. I'm always here. You belong to me." They were found in the most personal of places. Her bathroom mirror, the inside of her closet door, even under her pillow. Silent phone calls followed. At first, she heard only static, but soon there were faint, rhythmic breaths on the other end. Mariah's heart would race as she gripped the phone, waiting for a voice that never spoke. The police were sympathetic but skeptical, chalking it up to a stressed young woman living alone for the first time. Then, there was the figure. It started as a fleeting glimpse from the corner of her eye, a shadow that seemed to flicker and vanish. Mariah's nerves were fraying, her sleep plagued by nightmares of being watched. She began to dread the dusk, the long shadows that crept through her home as the sun dipped below the horizon. Her belongings began to shift inexplicably. The TV remote moved from the coffee table to the kitchen counter. Her favorite mug disappeared, only to reappear days later in the attic. Doors she knew she had locked stood ajar in the morning. Maria felt trapped in a web of fear and confusion, every creak of the house now a potential threat. Desperation led her to install surveillance cameras. She needed proof, something to convince herself that she wasn't losing her mind. The first few nights showed nothing unusual. Maria began to doubt herself, feeling the weight of isolation pressing down on her. Then one night, the footage changed everything. As Maria slept, a figure appeared on the screen. Tall and shadowy, it moved with a deliberate slowness, almost savoring the moment. The figure stood at the foot of her bed, watching her sleep, for what felt like an eternity. Maria's breath hitched as she watched the recording, her blood running cold. The figure knew her routine, her habits, and it was inside her home. Fear turned to resolve. She couldn't live like this, not knowing who or what was haunting her. The figure was not just a figment of her imagination. It was real, and it knew everything about her. Mariah's nightmare was no longer confined to the dark recesses of her mind. It had manifested into something tangible, something she had to confront. She had to find a way to stop it before it consumed her completely. Mariah's days became a haze of anxiety and exhaustion. Each creak, each whisper of wind against the windows felt like an imminent threat. She stopped sleeping in her bedroom, unable to shake the image of the figure standing over her. Instead, she found solace on the couch, where the television's soft glow offered a semblance of safety. But her sleep was fitful, and dark circles began to form under her eyes. Determined to understand the root of her torment, Maria delved into the history of the house. She spent hours at the local library, sifting through old newspapers and records. The house, she discovered, had a grim past. It had belonged to a man named Samuel Grady, a recluse who was rumored to have lost his mind after his wife disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The whispers of the town spoke of a man who became obsessed with the idea that his wife was still with him, hidden in the shadows. Mariah's breath quickened as she read about Grady's descent into madness. The house had stood vacant for years after his death, deemed too eerie and unsettling by locals. No one had mentioned this when she bought the property, and now she understood why it had been so affordable. Her dream home was a repository of sorrow and insanity, its walls soaked in the despair of its former owner. Desperation gnawed at her. She couldn't stay in the house, but she had nowhere else to go. Her friends and family, though supportive, were distant, physically and emotionally. They couldn't grasp the extent of her fear, the suffocating presence that now dominated her life. The police, growing weary of her calls, suggested she see a therapist, hinting that perhaps her mind was playing tricks on her. But Maria knew what she saw, what she felt. The figure was real, and it was not going to leave her alone. She had to confront it, to take control of her life again. With a resolve that belied her trembling hands, she decided to stay in the house one more night, determined to gather more evidence. She set up the cameras again, this time ensuring they covered every corner of the house. She also set up an alarm system, hoping it would give her some peace of mind. Night fell, and Maria waited, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She sat in the living room, clutching a baseball bat, her eyes darting to the monitor showing the camera feeds. Hours passed, each minute stretching into eternity. She fought the urge to doze off, knowing she needed to stay alert. Around 3 a.m., the air seemed to thicken. Maria felt a chill creep down her spine and her breath caught in her throat. The monitor flickered, and there it was, the figure. It moved with a ghostly grace, its form indistinct yet terrifying. It glided through the hallway, pausing at the entrance to the living room. Mariah's grip on the bat tightened, her knuckles white with fear. The figure did not enter the room. Instead, it seemed to sense her presence, its head turning slightly as if acknowledging her. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished. Maria sat frozen, her heart hammering in her chest. She waited, expecting it to reappear, but the house remained silent. Morning brought no comfort. Maria reviewed the footage, her stomach churning. The figure's movements were clear, its presence undeniable. She had proof now, something tangible to show the police. But more than that, she had a plan. She wouldn't let the house break her. She would fight back. She reached out to a paranormal investigator, hoping they could offer insight and perhaps a solution. She also contacted a contractor to install additional locks and fortify the windows. Maria was ready to face her fear head-on. She refused to be a victim in her own home. The battle was just beginning, and she was determined to emerge victorious. The paranormal investigator, John Harrington, arrived the next evening. A tall man with a calm demeanor, he exuded a quiet confidence that reassured Maria. He listened intently as she recounted her experiences, taking meticulous notes. His face remained impassive, though his eyes revealed a flicker of concern. "You're not the first person to experience something like this," John said gently. "But every case is unique. I will need to spend the night here, gather some data, and see what we're dealing with." Together, they set up an array of equipment: infrared cameras, motion sensors, and digital recorders. John explained the purpose of each device, his methodical approach offering a semblance of order to the chaos that had enveloped Mariah's life. As night fell, the house took on its usual sinister aura. Shadows seemed to deepen, and every creak of the old wood became amplified. John and Maria sat in the living room, the monitor displaying the various camera feeds. They spoke in hushed tones, the tension palpable. Hours passed, and the silence stretched thin. Mariah's eyelids grew heavy, her body yearning for rest, but she forced herself to stay awake. Around midnight, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Maria shivered, pulling her blanket tighter around her. John's equipment started to react. The motion sensors beeped softly, and the infrared camera picked up a faint silhouette. The figure had returned. John remained composed, his eyes fixed on the monitor. "There it is," he whispered. "It's in the hallway, just outside the living room." Mariah's heart pounded in her chest. She watched as the figure glided closer, its form barely discernible yet menacing. It paused at the threshold, much like the night before, seemingly aware of their presence. John's hand hovered over his recording equipment, capturing every moment. The figure began to move again, this time retreating towards the staircase. John motioned for Maria to stay put as he grabbed a handheld camera and followed the entity, his steps silent and deliberate. Maria watched the monitor, her nerves fraying as John disappeared from view. Minutes felt like hours as she waited in the oppressive silence, every sound magnified by her anxiety. John returned, his face pale but determined. "I think it's tied to the history of this place," he said, his voice steady. "There's a residual energy here, something that hasn't moved on. Samuel Grady's obsession with his missing wife may have left an imprint, a manifestation of his despair and madness." Maria felt a mixture of relief and dread. Understanding the source of her torment offered some comfort. but it also meant confronting the darkness head-on. John suggested a cleansing ritual, a way to release the trapped energy and hopefully bring peace to the house. They spent the next day preparing. John gathered the necessary materials: sage, candles, and holy water. He explained each step to Maria, emphasizing the importance of her belief and participation in the process. The ritual needed her intent to succeed, her will to reclaim her home. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they began. John lit the sage, its fragrant smoke filling the air. He moved through each room, chanting softly, while Maria followed with a candle, its flame a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. They sprinkled holy water in the corners, invoking a sense of purity and protection. As they reached the bedroom, the temperature plummeted once more. The figure materialized, more distinct than ever. Maria's breath caught in her throat as she faced the entity. She felt a surge of fear, but also a spark of defiance. John continued his chants, his voice steady and unwavering. Maria joined in, her words shaky at first, but growing stronger with each repetition. The figure seemed to waver, its form flickering as if caught between two worlds. For a moment, Maria thought she saw the outline of a woman within the shadow, a fleeting glimpse of sorrowful eyes. With a final, resonant chant, John completed the ritual. The figure dissolved, the oppressive weight lifting from the room. The temperature gradually returned to normal, and a sense of calm settled over the house. Maria felt an overwhelming relief, tears streaming down her face. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice trembling. John nodded, a small smile breaking through his stoic exterior. "I believe so, but it's important to maintain the sanctity of this space. Keep the house filled with light and positivity. You have the strength to reclaim your life." Maria thanked John profusely, her gratitude immeasurable. The house felt different, lighter, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. She knew the journey wasn't over, that she would need to heal from the trauma of the past weeks. But she felt empowered, no longer a victim, but a survivor. As she walked John to the door, the first rays of dawn breaking through the night, she felt a renewed sense of hope. The house that had once been a prison now held the promise of a new beginning. Maria knew there would be challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them, to build a life free from fear. Days turned into weeks, and Maria began to reclaim her life piece by piece. The oppressive weight that had once blanketed the house was gone, replaced by a lighter, more welcoming atmosphere. She started inviting friends over, filling the space with laughter and warmth. Each visit was a step towards normalcy, a reaffirmation that she was no longer alone in her struggle. Maria also took John's advice to heart, maintaining the sanctity of her home. She kept it well lit and filled with positive energy. Fresh flowers adorned the dining table, their vibrant colors a constant reminder of life and renewal. She played soft music in the evenings, the soothing melodies drowning out any lingering echoes of the past. Despite the newfound peace, Maria remained vigilant. She continued to monitor the cameras, albeit less obsessively, and kept her alarm system active. The fear had lessened, but it had not vanished entirely. She knew that trauma left scars, and healing was a gradual process. One afternoon, while organizing some old boxes in the attic, Maria stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside was a dusty, leather-bound journal. She opened it carefully, the pages brittle with age. It was Samuel Grady's diary. Her hands trembled as she read the first entry, dated over a century ago. The diary painted a harrowing picture of a man descending into madness. Samuel's entries started with mundane details of his life, but soon shifted to frantic notes about his missing wife, Eleanor. He was convinced she was still in the house, trapped somewhere he couldn't reach. His desperation grew with each passing day, his words becoming more erratic and filled with despair. Maria felt a pang of sympathy for the man who had once lived in her home. His grief had twisted into an obsession. His love for his wife turned into a relentless search for answers. The diary provided context, a deeper understanding of the hauntings she had experienced. Samuel's presence had been a manifestation of his unresolved anguish, a soul unable to find peace. Determined to honor the past and ensure it no longer cast a shadow over her future, Maria decided to give Samuel and Eleanor a proper farewell. She invited John back to the house, explaining her discovery and her plan. John arrived with a solemn expression, understanding the significance of the task ahead. Together, they prepared for a final ritual, one that would lay Samuel and Eleanor's spirits to rest. Maria felt a sense of closure, ready to face this last hurdle and truly move on. As night fell, they gathered in the attic, the place where Samuel's torment was most palpable. John lit the sage and candles, creating a circle of light in the dim space. Maria held the diary close, her voice steady as she read aloud the last entry, a plea for forgiveness and peace. They conducted the ritual with care, honoring the memory of Samuel and Eleanor. John's chants filled the air, interwoven with Mariah's heartfelt words. She spoke of forgiveness, of letting go, and of finding peace. The air seemed to shimmer, the house itself holding its breath. As the ritual concluded, a profound silence settled over the attic. Maria felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a sense of finality and relief. She knew in her heart that the spirits had found their peace, and her home was truly hers now. John placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've done it, Maria. You've given them the closure they needed. Now you can truly begin anew." Maria smiled, tears of relief and gratitude filling her eyes. She thanked John once more, knowing she could never fully repay him for his help and guidance. The house, once a source of fear and uncertainty, now felt like a sanctuary. With the attic cleansed and the spirits at rest, Maria felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. She embraced the future with open arms, ready to build a life free from the shadows of the past. The house, once steeped in sorrow, had become a place of healing and new beginnings. As she stood by the window, watching the first light of dawn break over the horizon, Maria knew she had conquered her fears. She was no longer a victim, but a survivor, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The house, now filled with light and love, was a symbol of her resilience and courage. Maria was finally at peace, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Mariah's journey towards reclaiming her life continued with renewed vigor. She immersed herself in her work, her creativity blossoming in the lightness of her home. The house, now filled with positive energy, became a hub for inspiration. She completed projects with a newfound sense of clarity and passion, her designs reflecting the transformation she had undergone. Word of Mariah's ordeal and resilience spread through her community. Her friends and neighbors, initially skeptical, now viewed her with admiration and respect. They were curious about the old house and its history, often dropping by to hear Mariah's story firsthand. These visits brought warmth and connection, further banishing the loneliness that had once consumed her. One evening, while hosting a small gathering of friends, Maria received an unexpected visitor. A woman in her late 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes, stood at the doorstep. She introduced herself as Lydia Grady, a distant relative of Samuel and Eleanor. "I heard about your experience and the ritual you performed," Lydia said, her voice tinged with emotion. "I've always been curious about our family's history. I never knew Samuel's story in such detail until now." Maria invited Lydia in, eager to learn more about the family that had once lived in her home. They sat together in the living room, surrounded by the warm glow of candlelight, and Lydia shared stories passed down through generations. She spoke of Samuel and Eleanor's love, their dreams, and the tragedy that had befallen them. Eleanor disappeared under mysterious circumstances, Lydia explained. Some believed she ran away. Others thought something more sinister had occurred. Samuel was never the same after she vanished. His love for her turned into an obsession, driving him to madness. Maria listened intently, feeling a deep connection to the past and to the people who had shaped the house's history. Lydia expressed gratitude for the peace Maria had brought to her ancestors' spirits, acknowledging the closure it provided for her family as well. As the night grew late, Lydia gifted Maria a small locket. "This belonged to Eleanor," she said, placing the delicate piece of jewelry in Mariah's hand. "It was passed down to me, but I believe it belongs here, in the house where their love began and ended." Tears welled in Mariah's eyes as she accepted the locket. It was a tangible link to the past, a symbol of the love and loss that had defined the house. She promised to cherish it, to keep it as a reminder of the journey she had taken and the spirit she had helped find peace. With Lydia's visit, Maria felt a deeper sense of purpose and belonging. She was not just a survivor of a haunting. She was a caretaker of history, a bridge between the past and the present. This realization empowered her, strengthening her resolve to honor the house and its legacy. As summer turned to autumn, Maria decided to host a community gathering, inviting friends, neighbors, and anyone interested in the house's story. She prepared meticulously, decorating the house with autumnal colors and setting up a display of historical artifacts, including Samuel's diary and Eleanor's locket. The evening was a resounding success. The house buzzed with conversation and laughter, its walls echoing with life and joy. Maria shared her story, recounting the haunting and the journey to peace, leaving her audience captivated and moved. Among the guests was a local historian, Dr. Alan Turner, who expressed a keen interest in documenting Mariah's experience. He proposed collaborating on a book about the house's history, intertwining it with Mariah's personal journey. Mariah agreed, seeing it as another step in her healing process and a way to share her story with a wider audience. As the gathering came to an end, Maria stood on the porch, watching her guests depart with smiles and heartfelt goodbyes. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing she had turned a house of sorrow into a beacon of hope and resilience. The house, once a place of fear and darkness, now radiated warmth and light. Maria had not only reclaimed her home, but had also built a community around it, drawing strength from the connections she had formed. She knew the future held challenges, but she faced them with unwavering courage, ready to embrace whatever came her way. In the stillness of the night, Maria placed Eleanor's locket on her bedside table, its presence a comforting reminder of the love that had endured within these walls. She lay down to sleep, a peaceful smile on her face, knowing that she had finally found her place, her purpose, and her peace. With the onset of winter, a quiet serenity settled over Mariah's life. Snow blanketed the ground, transforming the landscape into a picturesque wonderland. The house, adorned with festive decorations, glowed warmly against the cold, dark nights. Maria felt a profound sense of contentment, her heart filled with the tranquility she had longed for. The collaboration with Dr. Alan Turner on the book progressed smoothly. They met regularly, their discussions diving deep into the house's history and Mariah's personal journey. Alan was thorough and respectful, ensuring that Mariah's voice remained central to the narrative. The process was cathartic for Maria, each session helping her to articulate and release the lingering shadows of her past. One snowy evening, as Maria sat by the fireplace reviewing notes for the book, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. She had come so far from the terrified young woman who had first moved into the house. Her journey had been fraught with fear and uncertainty, but she had emerged stronger and more resilient. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was John Harrington, the paranormal investigator who had been instrumental in helping her reclaim her home. He had become a good friend, and his visits were always welcome. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check in on you," John said, shaking snow from his coat. "How have you been?" Maria smiled warmly. "I've been good, John. Really good. Come in, have some coffee." They sat by the fire, the flickering flames casting a comforting glow. Maria shared updates on the book project and her plans for the future. John listened intently, his eyes reflecting pride and admiration. "You've done something incredible here, Maria," John said. "You've not only reclaimed your life, but also transformed this house into a place of healing and hope. That's no small feat." Maria nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, John. Your support and guidance were crucial." As they talked, Maria realized that her journey had not only been about confronting and overcoming fear, but also about the connections she had made along the way. Friends, family, and even strangers had become part of her story, each playing a role in her transformation. The winter months passed peacefully, and as spring approached, the book was nearing completion. Alan and Maria decided to hold a launch event at the house, inviting the community to celebrate. It felt like the perfect way to honor the journey and the house that had been central to it. The day of the book launch arrived, and the house buzzed with excitement. Guests mingled, admiring the historical artifacts and photographs that Maria had displayed. There was a palpable sense of anticipation and joy in the air. Maria stood at the front of the room, looking out at the faces of friends, family, and neighbors. She felt a rush of emotions: pride, gratitude, and a profound sense of accomplishment. "Thank you all for being here," Maria began, her voice steady and strong. "This house has been through a lot, as have I. But today we celebrate not just a book, but the power of resilience, community, and hope. This journey has taught me that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always a way forward. We just need to find the strength within ourselves and the support of those around us." The room erupted in applause, the warmth and support of the community enveloping Maria like a protective embrace. She felt tears of happiness welling up, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. After the formalities, the event transitioned into a lively celebration. Maria moved through the crowd, thanking each person for their support. She shared stories, laughed, and felt a deep connection with everyone present. As the evening wound down, Maria found herself standing alone for a moment, gazing at the house that had become her sanctuary. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that she had not only faced her fears, but had also helped others find peace through her story. John approached, holding a copy of the book. "I got you a little something," he said, handing her the book with a smile. Maria opened the cover to find a handwritten note. "To Maria, a true beacon of light in the darkest of times, your courage and resilience inspire us all. John." Tears filled her eyes as she hugged John. "Thank you for everything." That night, as Maria lay in bed, Eleanor's locket resting on the bedside table, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The house was no longer just a place of refuge. It was a symbol of her strength and transformation. She knew that whatever the future held, she was ready to face it with courage and hope. Maria drifted off to sleep, the gentle sound of the wind outside a soothing lullaby. She had found her place, her purpose, and her peace, and she knew deep in her heart that she was finally home.